world of fear.
You're listening to Fearforge. Tonight's story is called The Haunting of Hollowbrook Manor. Don't look away. Let's begin. They say houses have memories, that the stone and timber absorb the lives lived within them. The arguments, the laughter, the tragedies. I used to believe that. I used to think of it as a romantic notion, The idea that we leave a piece of ourselves behind. But after Hollowbrook, I don't think it's memories. I think it's hunger. I haven't told this to the police. I certainly didn't tell the estate agents who listed the property back on the market a week after I left. They wouldn't have listened. They would have looked at the water damage, the mold, the scratches on the cellar door, and they would have just ticked a box on a survey form. But I know what was in that house, and I know that it's still waiting. If you're listening to this, and you see a listing for a Georgian manor in the Devonshire valleys, cheap rent, needs some care, just keep scrolling. Please. It started last February. I was between flats in London and low on funds, and a mate of mine put me in touch with an elderly couple, the Pearsons. They were heading to Spain for 3 months to escape the British winter and needed a house sitter. The place was called Hollowbrook Manor. It sounds grand, doesn't it? But when I drove down that single-track lane, dragging my exhaust through the mud, grand wasn't the word that came to mind. Forgotten was more like it. The house sat at the bottom of a steep, wooded valley, right where the sunlight seemed to give up and die around 3 in the afternoon. It was a big, gray stone brute of a building, strangled by ivy. The woods around it were ancient, oaks and elms that leaned in close, their branches scraping against the slate roof. And there was the brook, Hollowbrook. It didn't run past the house. It ran under it. Some Victorian architectural arrogance, diverting a stream through a culvert beneath the cellar. You could hear it constantly, a low, gurgling rumble, like the house was digesting something. The Pearsons were nice enough, though they seemed eager to leave. They gave me the keys, showed me how to bleed the radiators, and warned me that the old place creaks a bit in the wind. They were gone within the hour. The first week was just boring. It was silent, not the quiet of a library, but a heavy, damp silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums. I spent my time reading in the study, trying to ignore the cold. And God, it was cold. No matter how high I cranked the thermostat, the chill just seeped up through the floorboards. It smelled of wet wool and river mud. The first odd thing happened on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen making tea. I'd left a mug on the counter, a heavy ceramic one. I turned my back to get the milk from the fridge, and I heard a slide. Scrape. I turned back. The mug had moved. Not fallen, moved. It had slid 6 inches across the wooden worktop, away from the edge. I stared at it. I checked for a draft, or maybe the counter was uneven, but it was a solid slab of slate, perfectly flat. Right? I muttered to myself. Vibrations from the stream. Has to be. But then the smells started. I'd be sitting in the living room, and suddenly the air would turn foul. It wasn't the smell of drains or dead rats. It was the smell of something musky, like wet fur and old earth. It would drift in, thick and choking, hang there for 10 minutes, and then vanish as if a window had been opened. But the windows were painted shut, and the damp patches, they started appearing on the wallpaper in the hallway. Shapes. First they looked like clouds. Then, by day 4, they looked like handprints. Large, distorted handprints soaking wet, reaching up from the skirting boards. I stopped sleeping upstairs after the first week. The bedroom door had a habit of unlatching itself in the middle of the night. I'd wake up to the sound of the handle turning. Slowly, metal grinding on metal, and then the door would drift open, revealing the pitch-black landing. So I moved to the sofa in the living room. I kept the fire going. I told myself I was being ridiculous. A grown man, terrified of a drafty house. But the house wasn't just drafty. It was waking up. One evening it was storming outside. Proper British downpour hammering against the glass. I was trying to watch a film on my laptop when I heard it. Thump, drag, thump, drag. It was coming from the cellar. The cellar door was in the hallway under the stairs. Heavy oak, bolted from my side. I paused the film. The house went silent, apart from the rain. Then again, thump, drag, sounded heavy, like a sack of wet cement being pulled across the stone flags. I grabbed the heavy iron poker from the fireplace. I walked into the hallway. The air was freezing, my breath clouding in front of me. I stood by the cellar door, pressing my ear against the wood. For a moment, nothing. Then, a sound that made my blood turn to ice. Breathing. It was wet, rattling breathing, like someone trying to inhale through a throat full of water. It was right on the other side of the wood, inches away. "Hello," I called out. My voice shook. "Is someone down there?" The breathing stopped. Then, very slowly, a fingernail or a claw scratched down the other side of the door. From the top, all the way to the bottom. A long, slow screech that vibrated through the timber and into my skull. I backed away. I didn't unlock it. I went back to the living room, pushed the heavy armchair against the door, and sat with the poker in my hand until dawn. The next day I should have left. I know that now. But the storm had brought a tree down across the lane, blocking my car. The landline was dead. No mobile signal in the valley. I was trapped until the council came to clear the road. I spent the day barricading. I was in a frenzy. I nailed the cellar door shut with some spare planks I found in the garage. As the sun went down, the fog rolled in. Thick, white fog that pressed against the windows, blinding the house. At 8 p.m., the power died. The lights just fizzled out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my torch and lit a few candles. The silence was absolute now. The boiler had stopped humming. The fridge stopped buzzing. The only sound was the brook beneath the house. Gurgle, rush, splash. But the splashing sounded wrong. It sounded deliberate. I was in the hallway, shining my torch beam around, when I saw it. Water was seeping up between the floorboards. Not clean water. Black, oily sludge. It was bubbling up, pulsing. And then I heard the cellar door. The planks I had nailed up were groaning. The wood was bending. Something was pushing from the other side. Not with a bang, but with immense, steady pressure. Creak, crack. The nails popped, one by one. Ping, ping. Like gunshots in the quiet hallway. I ran. I ran up the stairs. God knows why I went up. Instinct, I suppose. Trying to get to higher ground. I locked myself in the master bedroom and pushed the dresser against the door. I stood in the middle of the room, shining my torch at the door, shaking. I could hear it coming up the stairs. It didn't walk like a person. It was a fluid, wet sound. Slap, squelch, slap, squelch. It was heavy, sodden weight hitting the carpet steps. The smell hit me first. That reek of ancient river mud, rotting leaves, and something dead. It filtered under the door, filling the room. Then, the handle turned. It jiggled violently. The dresser held. Silence. I held my breath, tears streaming down my face. "Go away," I whispered. "Please, just go away." Then, the scratching started. But not on the door. It was on the wall. The wall above the door. I shone my torch up. The plaster was bulging. It was wet, disintegrating like sodden cardboard. Something was coming through the wall itself. The lath and plaster gave way with a wet, tearing sound. And I saw it. It wasn't a ghost. It was nature, twisted into a mockery of a shape. It looked like a man made of river weeds and black roots. Its skin was slick, gray mud. It had no eyes, just hollow sockets dripping black water. It poured itself through the hole in the wall, dropping onto the floor with a wet thud. It was huge. It unfolded itself, limbs too long, joints cracking like snapping branches. It turned its head toward me. It didn't have a face, really. Just a slit where a mouth should be. It opened that mouth, and the sound of the house came out. Drip, creak. It was mimicking the sounds of the manor. I backed up until I hit the window. The thing took a step toward me. It left wet, black footprints on the carpet. It raised a hand, long, twig-like fingers dripping with sludge, and reached out. It whispered. It didn't speak English. It spoke in a low, bubbling gurgle that sounded like stones grinding together underwater. I didn't think. I couldn't think. I turned, grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the bedside table, and smashed the window. The glass shattered. The cold night air rushed in. We were on the first floor, a 15-foot drop. I didn't look back. I jumped. I hit the wet earth of the garden hard. I felt something snap in my ankle, a hot flash of pain, but the adrenaline masked it. I scrambled up, limping, falling, crawling through the mud. I didn't look back at the house until I reached the tree line. When I finally turned, the manor was just a dark silhouette against the gray sky. But in the broken window of the master bedroom, I saw a light. Not a candle. A pale, green phosphorescence. And a shape, standing there, watching me go. I walked 3 miles to the nearest farmhouse on a broken ankle. The farmer who found me thought I'd been attacked by a wild animal. I was covered in black slime. The police went to the manor the next day. They found the water damage. They found the broken window. They found the cellar door ripped off its hinges. But they didn't find anyone. They said the cellar was flooded. Said the culvert had burst and the foundations were unstable. I live in a city now. Birmingham. 3rd floor. No garden. No cellar. But sometimes, when it rains, I get that smell. That musky, river-rot smell. And last week, I woke up in the middle of the night. My bedroom door was open. I always lock it. On the floor, at the foot of my bed, there was a single, wet patch on the carpet. It wasn't water. It was black sludge. And in the center of it was a small, white river pebble. I threw it away. I scrubbed the carpet. But the stain won't come out. It knows where I am. The water connects everything. You see. Every pipe, every drain, every stream leads back to the earth. And I think the Hollowbrook is coming to fetch me back.